Warning. Within this fiction video, heavy subjects will be addressed such as mental illness disorders, school shootings, toxic relationships, and other assorted issues. If these are things you don't feel comfortable hearing about, I understand if you don't wish to continue watching this video. Welcome back for part 3 of Fixing Nubia Real One. This is the beginning of the end. Thank you so much for everyone that's been here since the beginning, and thank you for those who click out of curiosity and probably out of order. I've done it too. Like always, let me give a real quick recap and warning and then we'll start. In part 1, I introduced the original characters along with new ones. The whole point with the first video was to set up the plot and the conflict. In part 2, it was mostly about discovering the cause of the escalating conflict while also focusing on Nubia's family woes. Part 3, unsurprisingly, will bring about the conclusion to everything. Nubia's fractured family, the tension between Blue and Mateo, not to mention the big reveal that I've been hinting but not saying out loud. Finally, this is your warning. If you watched any of the previous videos or read the comic, you know what's going to happen. The final conflict will play out in the form of a school shooting. I need to make this extremely clear as possible. What will take place in the story is completely fictional. It is not based off of anyone or anything, and I do not condone the violent actions of the characters. With all that said, please enjoy the final chapter to the Fixin' Nubia Real One rewrite saga. Young Nubia is walking up a trail with her mother Amira. This is the 4th time they've done this. Last year Danielle was with them but could only make it halfway. They reach the top and it's always breathtaking, but Nubia has recently developed a slight fear of heights. She clings to her mother Amira's leg. Do you not like the view? Do we have to go down? You're too big for me to carry. Is it that scary? I'm not scared, but Dee is. Who's Dee? I don't know. I do. Dee's a warrior, just like you. Amira starts climbing down first. As nervous as Nubia is, she can't help but want to watch her mother. To her, her mother might as well be Superman. Amira calls for Nubia to start climbing. Young Nubia takes a breath and tells Dee it's time to go. This scene and the location is specifically linked to the next scene and the end of the story. I even featured it in the thumbnail art because it is significant. Given that Nubia and Diana are technically twins, twin gods in this little universe, I wanted to play on that and have some mention of Dee like in the comic. By the way, I made a bit of an oopsie by accidentally naming one of Blue's crew members Dee. I did it before I realized that I wanted to have some mention of Diana. So we don't get the two characters confused, I'm going to change his name to Dre. Alright then, let's move on. Now morning, Nubia hesitantly makes her way downstairs. She sees Amira sitting at the dining table writing. There's breakfast on the table, but no Danielle. Without turning around, Amira informs Nubia that Danielle left to buy groceries. Nubia slowly approaches, but is hesitant to sit down. You shouldn't feel this way around me. I shouldn't have lied, or said what I did. I do have regrets, and you are one of them. I failed you when you were a baby. And I failed you as a parent. You're a good mom. I've never needed to want for anything, and I have plenty of good memories with you. My favorites are when we went camping. I enjoyed that too. It was a nice break from this 9-to-5 lifestyle. I never realized how suffocating it could be until we stopped going. Why did we stop? You were growing up, developing other interests, and Danielle wanted to give you room to come into your own as a person. Maybe this summer we can go camping again. That would be nice. The two enjoy the rest of their morning as others too prepare for their day. When I started writing the rewrite and had a decent understanding of the direction I wanted to go, this scene popped into my head like a vision, and not long after that, the ending of this saga was revealed to me as well. This really helped me narrow the direction I needed to take to have the events of the rewrite line up, so it didn't feel like it came out of nowhere. That was the reason for mentioning the camping when Nubia was talking to Oscar in part 1. I tried to be consistent, and while not everything in the story has to link up, I do think it is important that most does. That was something that I believe the story in the comic struggled with, especially the first half. At the end of part 2, I purposely left the rift between Nubia and Amira unresolved so we could start part 3 on a positive note, given the negative direction it's going to take later on. What I was really wanting to focus on the most in this scene was Amira specifically. In part 2, I talked about how Amira had a hard time expressing herself and just showing some type of vulnerability with Nubia. You've heard me bitch about characters not taking accountability, and I'll be d***ed if I was going to make the same mistake. Amira's first words is her acknowledging that she screwed up because Nubia, her child, should not feel nervous or scared around her, the parent. Due to this, Amira admits her faults, opening herself up to Nubia, possibly for the first time ever, which in return allows the two of them to have a genuine conversation. If you listen to the previous conversations between Amira and Nubia, in part 1, Amira was the one leading the conversation. In part 2, Nubia started the conversation, but Amira took control of it. Here, in a way you could say Nubia is leading it, but really it's just a conversation between two people that is tired of masquerading and walking on eggshells. Keisha drops Luna and T off at their school before making her way to her school. Normally Jason would drive them, but he had to go to school early for a team meeting. A car pulls up beside her and it's Waylon. Get in. The hell I will. I want to talk. I said all that I want to say to you at the party, and I've been thinking about it, and you're right. Keisha's flabbergasted at what she just heard. In all the time she's known Waylon, he's never admitted to someone else being right, even when he knew he was wrong. He tells Keisha that he wants to have a heart-to-heart before school starts. Waylon is known to twist other people's words to get what he wants, but Keisha is unsure what he could be after. However, him admitting she was right is throwing her off. Maybe he really is trying to change, and if she rejects him now, he might not go through with it. Keisha gets in the car. You know movies, mainly thriller and horror, specifically zombie movies, where the films open up with everyone going about their daily lives with their daily routines and then 10 minutes later, all hell breaks loose? That's what I was going for here. When it comes to Keisha, I wasn't too sure the role she would play involving the tragic event. In the comic, she was the cataclysm to it, even though it didn't really make much sense. It honestly came out of nowhere because it felt like Waylon got his revenge on Keisha when he ruined the protest that she organized. Which leads to another issue. Every encounter Nubia has with Waylon, Keisha is a driving force to it. Take her out of the equation and there is no fight at the party. Waylon wouldn't have started the riot at the protest and he wouldn't have enacted that terrible crime. Taking a closer look, it was really Nubia and Keisha that was triggering these reactions from Waylon. Don't take that the wrong way. We are all responsible for our actions, but that doesn't mean we are not influenced towards one direction or another due to the actions of those around us. Oscar waits for Lewis to pick him up and take him to school, but he's late. That's a first. Lewis is always early and is quick to scold Oscar for just being a second late. Ever since what happened to Juan, the crew's been on edge, especially Lewis. Finally, Lewis arrives, but when Oscar gets in the car, he notices luggage bags in the back seat. You going on vacation? Something like that. What's going on, Lewis? I've never seen you like this except for when you first joined Mateo's crew. Lewis doesn't respond and just starts driving, but he's going the wrong way. Never has Lewis ever once let Oscar be late or miss a day of school. Something was definitely wrong. When Nubia arrives at school, she can't find any of her friends. Jason has his meeting, but it should have been over by now, and Keisha's not responding to her texts. She spots Blue, but something's off. She and the rest of her crew are wearing identical jackets. That's a first. What's with the matching outfits? It's called a school uniform. I mean with the jackets. With everything going on, we thought it'd be best to be cautious. The jackets had padding. Nubia isn't sure how to respond. It's clear what they're preparing for, and as much as she wants to argue that isn't necessary, but from what she's learned about Mateo, it just might be. Nubia gets a call from Jason. His meeting is over, but Keisha isn't responding to his text. Out of the three of them, Keisha is the most addicted to her phone. The bell's about to ring, but the two agree to find Keisha before going to class. When they meet up, they text Keisha's brother Josh, who confirms that she did leave for school. Their family has a system that whoever takes Luna and T to school has to text the rest of the family, confirming that they dropped them off. Josh did get the text. Not wanting to worry him, the friends speculate that they probably just missed her. The bell rings, but the two decide to pass by Keisha's class in hopes to spot her. Halfway there, they hear something that no one ever wants to hear at a school. When it comes to Oscar, I can't say too much without giving it away, but from what was revealed about Lewis in part 2, it's clear what his motive is, but what will be the result of it, you'll just have to wait and find out. In case there's any confusion, Blue doesn't know what's about to happen. The jackets were merely conversation starters. However, it is acknowledgement that Blue does expect some kind of retaliation for what happened to Juan, and is doing what she can to protect those that follow her. One more thing that I want to address is the friendship dynamic between Nubia, Jason, and Keisha. In the comic, it felt more like Nubia and Keisha were closer with each other than they were with Jason, even though Keisha and Jason grew up together and Nubia was the new kid on the block, which made their friendship come off unbalanced. It was always Nubia and Keisha at the forefront of whatever dispute while Jason was in the back, hardly doing or saying anything. It kinda comes off as if Jason was created only to be their chauffeur. With my rewrite, I did my best to keep their friendship balanced. by giving them each a moment with Nubia. In part 1, Nubia went home with Keisha, spending time alone with her. After the party, Nubia and Jason have a moment alone in the car. In part 2, every scene that Keisha and Jason was in was always together with Nubia because there was no need to give more attention to one or the other. Same goes here. I wanted to give each of the friends a role to play while giving them each ample screen time. The silent ride with Waylon is unnerving as he drives further away from the school. Keisha tries to think of ways to get her phone back, but all her ideas end with them crashing. Finally, however, he stops. Looking around, she thinks she knows where she's at, but the trick will be to get away from Waylon. The door unlocks and he gets out. Keisha's hesitant at first, but doesn't want to miss this opportunity and quickly gets out before he has a chance to lock the doors again. She runs a distance from the car, but Waylon doesn't follow. He just looks puzzled by her behavior. This is kidnapping. You got in the car of your own free will, and you can walk away whenever you want. My phone? Waylon drops it over the edge. Keisha now thinks the worst, but Waylon just takes a seat on the hood and takes in the view. What the hell? Like I said, you can leave whenever you want. So you can run me over with your car? I'm not that psychotic. I don't get it. Why drag me out here then? Just start walking. By the time you reach the highway, it should all be over anyway. What do you mean over? What did you do? Just go, Keisha. I'm not going to hurt my alibi. Keisha does exactly that. She doesn't know what's going on, but she's not sticking around to find out. I gotta say, I think this version of Waylon is more intimidating than the comic version. I think part of the reason for that is that my version of Waylon is more manipulating. He tried to gaslight Keisha in part 1 at the party, and now he's using her own words against her to get her to lower her guard, and unfortunately it works. In the comic, Waylon basically has tantrums. He's always putting on a front, and when he gets embarrassed or told no, his first reaction is to call people names and then get physical. That's what children do. When they get upset, they call each other names, start throwing their toys around because they're not getting their way. What part of that behavior is supposed to be intimidating? I never really addressed Waylon being in Mateo's crew, and I apologize for that. Waylon isn't necessarily an official member, but he specifically joined for his own benefit. There are people like that. They join a group not because they share the same belief, but because they want safety and comfort, and they think they'll get that if they join what they consider the winning or stronger side. The best historical example of this would be the SSS party. However, Waylon is a very self-centered person in both versions, and when something is no longer convenient for him, this is what he does. He finds a way to save face. Lewis pulls into a garage to the relief and bewilderment of Oscar. He silently leads Oscar through the scrapyard and pulls the cover off of a car. This was supposed to be your graduation present. So you are leaving. Why? Is it because of Mateo? You don't have to protect me anymore. It's not always about you, cuz. I don't want to tell you what's going on. You'll find out, and when you do, you'll hate me, and rightfully so. Lewis, you've been like a brother to me since day one. Whatever you've done, I'll probably be pissed at you for it, but I'll never hate you. It's not what I did. It's what I supplied Mateo with, so he can do what he wants. Be a better man than me, Oscar. And don't wait too long. Girls don't wait forever. From a young age, Lewis told Oscar never to cry around others, but what else is there to do when there's nothing left to say? The cousins hug, knowing this may very well be the last time they will ever see each other. One of the most common complaints I hear about this comic is the lack of male representation. It's clear this comic was specifically written for a young female audience, which is concerning given certain scenes in the comic and the explicit language, but I've already talked about that in part 1. The male characters in the comic were either extremely passive, like Jason, who didn't really do anything, or they were extremely misogynistic, meaning Waylon. Oscar was the closest thing to a decent representation of a male character, but because of how he was drawn and portrayed, many male reviewers of the comic just couldn't relate to any of the male characters. My main goal when it came to Oscar and Jason was to try and depict boys on the cusp of manhood. I'll be straight with you, I'm a girl, so my knowledge on this is limited, but I wanted to at least try. I do have male figures in my life that I've looked up to since I was a little kid, and I'm using them as examples. With that said, I wouldn't call Lewis a prime example of what it means to be a man because he bullies his cousin and he's run away from his problems instead of taking accountability for it. However, that doesn't mean he's not a man. He chose to look after Oscar when he had no responsibility to. He joined Mateo not because he wanted to, but for the sake of Oscar, and most importantly, he acknowledges his failure by telling Oscar to be a better man. That's a hard pill to swallow. Alright, here is your warning. This next scene will take place in the school during the unthinkable act of a school shooting. I want to make this as crystal clear as possible. This is fictional, and I under no circumstances condone the violent acts that are committed, nor do I encourage anyone to replicate the acts of the protagonist. Here we go. Nubia and Jason duck in the girls' bathroom, believing that to be their safest option since all the doors are locked. The bathrooms don't have doors, but it's better than nothing. They find others hiding in the stalls. They're scared out of their minds, and one of them looks to be on the verge of a panic attack. Her friends and Nubia manage to calm her down. Before they can decide what to do next, Nubia hears someone approaching. The girls hide in the stall while Jason positions himself with a heavy school book in hand. Nubia carefully listens behind the stall. She wanted to stay with Jason, but he insisted she hide. Nubia hears it all play out, but she hears Jason struggling more than she thought he would. Something comes over Nubia and she rushes out to help. Between the two of them, they manage to subdue him. Jason knocks him out with the book, and Nubia takes the guy's belt and ties his hands behind his back. Jason now asks where the gun went. As they search for it, they find one of the girls holding it. "Nia, put that down. That is not a toy. It's our only protection." "The cops are on their way, Nia. Remember the drills?" Protocols for situations such as this is the doors entering the school automatically locks and the cops are automatically called as well. Unfortunately, this does mean they are locked out of their classrooms. The teachers have a responsibility to keep the students under their care safe, meaning they are not allowed under any circumstances to open their doors. Not to mention, students and teachers are probably texting and calling their loved ones and also calling 911 as well. Jason argues having a gun will only make their situation worse, but the girls argue the opposite, and Nubia too thinks it would be in their best interest to keep it. However, she would prefer if it was in Jason's hands, who does have experience with firearms. "Nia, the cops that are coming are responding to a school shooting. They don't know who the shooters are. If they see that in your hand, it won't matter what you try to tell them. You will be arrested." Nia gives Jason the gun and immediately he disarms it. Unfortunately, there's no time to breathe as a phone rings and it's none of theirs. It's clear that this guy was sweeping the area and it was only a matter of time before the others realized his absence. There's no doubt they'll come looking for him. It's time to make a decision. Jason reveals that in the boys' locker room, there's a door that isn't connected to the system. It has to be locked manually, and the coach usually keeps it unlocked during school hours. One of the girls asks how can he know the coach didn't lock it when the shooting began. When Jason's team meeting was over, the coach left early because he had something to do on the other side of the school. He left the door unlocked so students wouldn't have to go through the school to get to their class. Jason's positive it's unlocked. Some of the girls don't want to take the chance and want to stay, while the others want to leave before it's too late. However, Nubia is adamant. No one is being left behind. "I'll go and check to see if the coast is clear." "It should be me instead. I'll go." "That's not happening. I'm the man. It's my responsibility." "You're right. That's why, if I get caught, you need to be here to protect them." Before heading out, everyone puts their phone on silent. Nubia uses FaceTime on her phone so Jason can tell her if anyone's there. One of the girls had her AirPods with her and gave them to Nubia to use. The group gets decently far with their system, but they run into a snag. There's two of them right in front of the entrance of the gym. Nubia and Jason are unsure how to deal with this obstacle, and now the girls are starting to get spooked and want to go back. Nubia remembers the phone. Jason turned it off and put it in his pocket. They don't know who anyone in his phone is, but they look at his text and narrow down who the two could be. Nubia sends emojis to see if they react. One guy does check his phone. Seeing that, they come up with a plan. They'll send a text telling the other two that the other guy got jumped and is locked in a closet. Hopefully they'll take the bait and leave to help him, giving them the chance to make a run for the gym. Everyone holds their breath as Jason sends the text. It's no secret that male characters are unfortunately being forced to take a step down so female characters can have their moment in the spotlight. Season 3 of Mandalorian is a prime current example of this, and it's such BS. That is not empowering to women. If anything, when writers do this, they're saying the opposite, that a woman can't stand beside a man. I'm not saying that, I'm saying the writing is depicting that. Because Jason was MIA during the school shooting in the comic, I wanted him to have a more prominent role, but of course he couldn't overshadow Nubia. I figured I'd let them take turns taking the lead until the climax. Because I made Jason's father a cop, I figured that Bo would advise his son on the do's and don'ts of gun safety in emergency situations, making Jason the one more equipped to handle being put in a situation like they are currently. But that doesn't mean he's not scared out of his mind. However, because there are others that can't hide their fear, he obviously feels a need to be strong for them. Same goes for Nubia. I know there's this cliche of how some women swoop in to save the guy, but that's not what happened here. Nubia assisted Jason, but she didn't single-handedly take the guy down. They worked together, and that's the key here. Also, I want to point out that while I have not mentioned much about Nubia's powers, I have been dropping little hints of its awakening, such as her listening in on conversations and isolating the noise. Here is the same thing, but there's an extra element similar to what we saw in part 1 at the park. Nubia's warrior instincts are coming to the forefront. Danielle watches in horror as the incident is reported live. The entire school is surrounded, but police have yet to make their way inside. Danielle has contacted Nicole and Beau, but unfortunately none of their children have contacted them as of yet. Amira emerges from their bedroom and Danielle is taken back by her appearance. Amira has a stern yet tender expression. Through the years of living together, Danielle has come to understand this is Amira's way of saying everything will be alright. I thought if I made Nubia into a strong warrior, it would make up for my failure. But nothing I've done has made it right. You idiot. You being here, watching her grow and giving her someone to look up to is all she ever needed. She needs you too. If not for you, she wouldn't have turned out as perfect as she is. I haven't been a good partner to you, and for that, I'm sorry. Amira, you're scaring me. Thank you for being so patient with me. I want you to always know the day we met, you saved me. Please, bring her home. No more secrets. When we get back, I'll tell you both everything. I had to do it. I know it feels a little out of place, but I do think this does fit with Amira's character. She's an Amazon warrior that will answer the call of the battlefield, especially when it involves her child. More importantly, just like Nubia and Amira had a scene to resolve their issues, Amira and Danielle needed one as well, and it would have been a disservice to do it off screen. Not to mention, this is a parent's worst nightmare, and while I am focusing on the child's perspective of this tragic event, I do believe it is just as important to showcase all parties that will undoubtedly be affected by this. This is your daily warning. We're going back to the school and things are going to get real. The group anticipates as they watch the assailants respond to the text. They make a call, and after a few anguishing moments, they leave. Just like before, Nubia is first, and to the rest of the group's relief, she gives them the go-ahead. They run believing to be home free, but to Nubia's horror, someone yells out to them. He must have been brought in to replace the other two. Nubia's body reacts, tackling him with an aggression she's never experienced before. The gun goes off and she yells to the rest to run. Jason tries to go back to help, but Nubia screams for him to keep the girls safe. To his dismay, Jason leaves her. When they disappear into the locker room, Nubia's aggression dies and he quickly starts to overpower her. Nubia wonders if she should just give up, but the decision is made for her as he's knocked out. Nubia is bewildered, but Blue wastes no time picking up the gun. Let's go, there's a way out. They have Dre and Roxy, I'm not leaving without them. Blue, there's at least 2 more coming, there's no way they didn't hear that. Well, it's a good thing I have this. This isn't Call of Duty, put it down and let's go! Blue walks away, but Nubia can't bring herself to do the same. She grabs Blue, but Blue turns the gun on her. Nubia is unsure how to respond, and it doesn't seem like Blue knows either. Mateo and his crew walks in, spiraling the situation even further. Finally, the head of the snake. You're the only snake here. What the hell, Mateo? Why would you do this? Ask her. She started this. The hell I did. One of my guys is in the hospital because of you. He was the one instigating it. They were defending themselves. 2 against 1? The hell they were. Nubia has had it. She asks Mateo what it is he is after. How does this keep his community or his mother safe? This act can only end with an irredeemable reputation. The only salvation Nubia can see for them is if they cease what they are doing before anyone gets hurt. Mateo makes it clear it's too late for that. No one will make me bow my head ever again. And I'm not losing any more friends. Everyone please, just stop! When Tipper's flaring, the time for talk has ended. Both Blue and Mateo pull the trigger, but a shield is thrown between them, blocking each other's bullets. You know what the weird thing is? I almost forgot to write Blue into this. The motive behind this terrible act is clear. Unresolved trauma from both Mateo and Blue has been festering for years, and now it finally boiled over. The thing is, it's obvious that it hit Mateo the hardest because it was his mother, not a friend or a neighbor, but his mother, his blood. Not to mention he was already dealing with another social issue prior to what happened to his mother. So it's not too much of a stretch to see him respond this extremely, and in an unfortunate way, he's just too far gone to save currently. As for Blue, friends come and go in our lives, and as tragic as it was about what happened to Jack, Blue was given the chance to heal from that. Her parents sat her down and talked with her about it, but because Blue wouldn't let it go and move on, this is the result. Nubia gave her an out and she chose to stay, perpetuating it. Final warning, this is the last stretch and it is a hard one because a fatality will occur. Jason leads the girls to the door and to all of their relief it's unlocked. Now outside, Jason questions if he should go back, but hearing the sirens gives him his answer. Jason looks for his father among the sea of police cruisers. Finally, father and son are reunited. Jason wastes no time telling his father what happened and who was left behind. I left her. I left Nubia. What if... Jason, these girls are safe because of you. I'm proud of you. Now leave the rest to me. Bo unexpectedly spots Amira. He tells his partner to inform the other officers of what Jason told them. He approaches her and at first asks about the getup, but Amira has no time for jokes. As she informs him that she's going in, Bo tries to stop her, but Amira makes it clear that her combat experience outweighs his. He's completely against it, but Amira doesn't wait around for his permission. She overheard Jason about the door and of Nubia. Giving no time to inform the others, he radios it in as the two of them enter the lockered room. They hear yelling, and as they peek their heads out, the guns go off. Amira springs into action, and Bo orders them to drop their weapons. Mateo quickly opens fire, and his crew follows his lead. Nubia ducks behind the shield, pulling Blue with her. Amira uses her sword to cut and reflect the bullets. She gets close enough to disarm some of Mateo's men. Bo chases after one trying to escape when reinforcements emerge from the locker room. Nubia wrestles with Blue over the gun, but when Blue sees the reinforcements, she relents, and Nubia searches for her mother. Nubia loses all control. I'll kill you. Nubia, don't! With no time to waste, Bo tackles Nubia to the ground, but she quickly rushes to her feet. Bo holds her tight so she can pursue, but he is struggling to hold her back as Nubia's eyes are fixated on Mateo, who is struggling to catch his breath after nearly having his windpipe crushed. Bo covers Nubia's eyes, hoping that might calm her down, if only a little, and to his relief, it does. I'm so sorry, Nubia, but that's not the answer. It won't undo anything, and it won't take the pain away. The anger within Nubia subsides, and she quickly makes her way to Amira's side. I want to go home. Help's on the way. I want to see my sisters. You have sisters? At the mascara. The paramedics arrived, but there was nothing to be done. It was over. Looking back at the comic, I personally think Ella McKinney took it a step too far when she had children getting shot in her adaptation. I think there's a time and place to showcase something like that, but given the age range of this comic, 13 to 17, I just don't think it was appropriate, and I was not going to do the same thing. Even though this comic is for young adults, and while the young reader should be able to relate to some degree to the young characters and feel that they too can overcome their hardships, I do believe it's just as important to express that sometimes it's okay that you can't handle what's on your plate, and that it's okay to ask for help. I watched this video a while back ago. I'll link the video down below. It talked about how you shouldn't give your character more than they can handle. That's why I had Jason and Nubia together. It would have been too much for either character to shoulder the responsibility of looking after the safety of these terrified girls. That's why Jason broke down. When he and Nubia separated, the responsibility of those girls was solely placed on his shoulders. When they finally reached that door and the safety that was on the other side, all that weight was taken from Jason, a child, and given to his father, an adult. I originally thought that Bo would have more on-screen time than he did, and I would have liked to have explored his character more, but I never want to add anything just for the sake of it. I always want the progression of the story to feel as natural as possible. Despite Bo not being seen as much, every scene he is in carries weight, which was the goal. First time we see him, in part 1, he is encouraging and thoughtful. In part 2, he listens and advises. In part 3, he is that rock that everyone needs and should have when tragedy strikes. Bo holds his son and lets him cry. He stops Nubia from crossing that line and fights to calm her down so she could say goodbye to her mother. That is a man. I don't know if you were surprised about how Amira's story ended, but in case you're wondering why wasn't her last words some form of endearment towards Nubia or Danielle, it's because she already made peace with both of them prior. Her last words was what she was holding in for the past 16 years from the moment Hippolyta asked her to raise her daughter. This was also to nudge Nubia into the direction of realizing that while her life isn't a lie, there are truths missing from it. Especially with her powers fully awakened now, she knows that she's going to have to start seeking the answers as to why. When the ordeal was over, the reports came in, and surprisingly no one from the school was hurt. The media tried to hail Jason as a hero, but he wanted no part of it. Keisha was picked up and informed the police of what happened. They couldn't press any charges on Waylon regarding the shooting or Keisha, which upset Keisha deeply. A funeral was held for Amira, but no family on her side came. Despite that, the funeral went on. Danielle did her best to abide by Amira's wishes, but some of the final rites proved difficult to complete. When it was over, Amira's urn was placed in a cupboard. It was just too painful right now. Nubia hears Danielle crying, but is unsure how to console her, but she doesn't want to leave her alone with her pain. Nubia awkwardly tries to cheer her up, but Danielle sees through her. I'm sorry, Nubia. It's not your place. You're the child. And you're the widow. That's no excuse when I still have a child to take care of. I'm almost 18. Almost, but not quite. However, you have taken on a lot, and it has helped ease the burden. So maybe you should have this now. Danielle uncovers the chest. She explains that before they got married, Amira requested that Danielle never ask about the chest, telling her that that was the one thing that was hers alone. Danielle was taken back by this, but had no issues accepting Amira's request. However, the secrecy of the chest would become overwhelming at times, and Danielle would sometimes be resentful of it because it was Amira's only connection to her past and seemed to always be the one thing holding her back from fully embracing the life she was having now. With hesitancy, Danielle tells Nubia that the chest is hers and whatever secrets it holds. She gives Nubia the letter that came with it, explaining that she made Amira write one after their fight. Danielle leaves Nubia to have some privacy, but Nubia asks if she wants to stay. Whatever's in there was in Amira's past, and I treasure the years I've spent with my Amira too much to go looking for skeletons. With the room to herself, Nubia takes a deep breath and reads the letter. Nubia, life is hard and it seems to only keep getting that way the longer we're on this earth. I've lived for a long time, longer than most, so you think I'd know better, but there lies the problem. You don't know me, and I selfishly expected you to let me know everything about you. You're almost an adult now, and it terrifies me that you might never look back, all because I wouldn't let you in. So here, it's my olive branch. I'm a soldier that took pride in my victories. I loved the battle and I relished in my accomplishments. At the time, my greatest achievement was joining the Royal Guards. However, nothing is permanent. A trespasser came and stole something of great importance. I was the one tasked to retrieve it. I traveled long and far, further than I've ever gone from my home, but I did find you. You were so tiny, but you weren't scared. I fought so hard to bring you home, but I ran out of time. Your mother's cries when I had to sail away with you will always haunt me. I thought if I raised you the way I thought she would have, it would have made up for my failure. I see the fault in that now. Think of me what you will. I deserve it. If this is the beginning of our end, I understand. I can't undo my mistakes, and I will always carry these regrets. But watching you grow into who you are, I selfishly hold dear. It took a while, but I'm here. I think there's more trees than last time. I've always loved this view, but you were right. I was scared. I was scared I'd fall. But you being there with me always gave me courage. I graduated top of my class, but I wasn't valedictorian. I'm sorry, I just didn't want the attention. I got a full scholarship, and Danielle's doing well. It did take a while, but we're all now in a better place. But I haven't told Danielle what was in the letter. That was one hell of a thing you sprung on me. If it wasn't for everyone keeping an eye on me, I don't think I'd be telling you all this good news. I guess that old saying is true. It does take a village. I looked it up, but I can't find mention of Themyscira anywhere. All the books and scrolls that was in the chest are in different languages that the apps don't recognize. Just where do you come from? It took some time, but I'm not angry anymore. And I've decided you are my mother. And I swear I will find Themyscira and take you home. Well, I guess that's about all that I had to report. Oh, by the way, there's a new superhero, and it's a woman. She wears a peculiar outfit and bracelets that look very familiar. I think she might be my best lead. She goes by the name... Obviously, there was going to be an aftermath. Originally, I had planned to end the story at Nubia's graduation and have her give the valedictorian speech because I wanted to end the story on a positive note. However, the transition from Nubia inheriting the chest to her graduation, it just didn't feel right. I think what it was is that I didn't want to end the story with Nubia in front of an audience. That's not Nubia. That's not this Nubia. Given the scale of the conflict, a loud and proud ending just wouldn't have been as impactful as a quiet one. Despite all the comic's faults, the quiet ending that it had was the best ending for that story. I knew I wanted to incorporate Diana somehow at the end, and originally I was going to draw her, but I felt that would have been a disservice to Nubia. I think that's an issue that a lot of super side characters have. The writers go for that nostalgia bait and bring in as many main superheroes as they can to uplift the main character in their own comic, instead of letting them stand on their own. Ellen McKinney did the same thing with her comic. When it came to the big reveal of Nubia's identity, obviously it had to come from Amira, but I didn't want it to be straightforward like in The Princess Diaries.
You are Amelia Mignonette Thermopolis Rinaldi, Princess of Genovia.
Me? A princess? Shut up!
Instead, I wanted it to be given in a way where Nubia would desire to want to know more, to seek it out for herself, because Amira took it to the grave. The most important thing that I wanted to convey with this ending and the rewrite as a whole was that I wanted Nubia to come into her own. I even tried to display that within the thumbnails, particularly with how Nubia was depicted. In the first image, she's crouching in a ruin looking up. I drew her like that because I knew nothing about Nubia. I did not know this character existed until this comic. Second image, Nubia's still looking up, but she's out in the sun and is more elevated. However, by the third image, she is standing tall and proud and looking straight, not up. That last bit with Nubia on the mountain, that was about her making peace. Learning any family secret that impacts your perception of your family can really f*** with you, and it's no different for Nubia. I wanted to convey that she did struggle with it, and if it wasn't for the people in her life, the people that we've met, Nubia would have undoubtedly gone down a dark path, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It would have definitely given her more character. The point I'm trying to make is that it took Nubia a long time to find peace with not only Amira's absence, but also with the confession she left behind. But now that she has, Nubia's ready to forgive her mother Amira and make the declaration that she will honor her dying wish, igniting that next chapter in Nubia's life. That is it. It is done. I was really nervous doing this, and I'm still a little nervous, but I'm glad I did it. I have really enjoyed working on this rewrite while exploring and expanding upon not only existing characters, but also the ones I created. I am aware I deviated significantly from the main plot of the comic. I just didn't feel comfortable recreating some of the more sensitive conversations and the depictions of racism this comic displayed. I know that heavily affected the direction my version took, but I'm still very satisfied with what I wrote. I am aware that my version has its flaws and is probably not preferred over Ellen McKinney's comic. After all, Ellen McKinney's version was telling a specific story to a particular audience. She was telling a coming-of-age story about being black in America. Whether or not she did a good job and it reached the audience it was intended for, that's not for me to say. That's why I heavily diverted from that perspective, because I knew I couldn't tell that story and it was not my place to. With that said, I want to address something that Ella McKinney said in the beginning of her comic. She has this monologue where she talks about not being able to see herself within the superhero characters that she grew up reading until she saw Nubia. She emphasizes that it was the appearance of the character and not her personality that defined her appeal to the character Nubia. I understand the importance of showing diversity, especially when we live in a very multicultural country. However, it's concerning that a character's appearance seems to matter more than their personality. I find it interesting that when Ella McKinney was describing how she was gushing over Nubia's appearance, she didn't talk about the story that introduced her to the character or how the character was portrayed. Character design is extremely important because we do eat with our eyes first, especially when it's comics, but ultimately it is the character's personality that is the deciding factor on how well the audience receives it. Take Batman for example. If all Bruce Wayne was a rich guy that got his kicks beating up people that was of lower class than him, his character would not be the cultural icon it is today. What gravitates people's interest towards this character is his desire to stop criminal activity in hopes by preventing crime, it'll keep someone's life from shattering the way his did when he was a child. He is giving back to his community in ways his money can't. However, it's not enough and Bruce is aware that he's fighting a never-ending battle. Despite that, Batman persists even though his decision to do so is chipping away at him both physically and mentally. It's all these little things that builds up his character that attracts me to his character. While I'm not the biggest superhero fan, Batman is one of my favorite DC characters, and it's not because I see myself in him. With all that said, I'd have one final thing I'd like to say, specifically to Ella McKinney. I know that she'll most likely never see this, but to anyone watching, maybe you can take something away from this. Mind you, I'm not a professional. To Ella McKinney, what I would like to see from her in the future is to see her expand more on her characters and story. Don't be afraid to show the negative sides of your characters and the dark point of views of your story. I'd like for her to show both sides of the coin instead of just focusing on one side. The more angles you show, the more dimension you give your story. Let me end this by saying the same thing that I said about Moriko Tamaki, the writer of I Am Not Starfire. Do better because you are capable of better. Thank you so much for watching from beginning to end. I appreciate it so much. Don't be shy to let me know what you think and like and subscribe.